We're getting ready for our next speaker, and it's Thomas Schoegje.
Ciao, can I start?
Yes, you can.
Hey everybody, I'm Thomas Schoegje. Let me share my screen right now. Like this. And oh, actually like this. Here we go. Hey, I am Thomas Schoegje, and I'm really excited that today I get to tell you a bit about what I've been working on recently. I want to show you some early results on mapping neurodiverse challenges. So how people, well, you'll see. So let's go. Why should you listen to me? I guess. What do I know? Well, my background is in uh, human-computer interaction. So theoretically, I know how to make a system useful or usable. And I'm currently doing that at the University of Milano Bicocca, where I'm looking at how can we get large language models to be less on-demand passive tools, and how can we get them to chime in when they feel like they have something to contribute. So the main thing that I want to get to is as a user-centered researcher, I look at the mismatch between what people need and what their information systems do and see if we can fix that. So that's also, of course, the lens I bring to other problems. So um, yeah, so here's a big one. Neurodiverse people have all kinds of challenges, and we try to figure out what are these challenges. So a recent survey paper mapped them out a bit around different domains, and I thought it was really interesting. And then I was thinking, okay, so what's the next step? How can we actually do something with that? And yeah, so questions I had was, how often do these different challenges occur? Like, which one should we prioritize, or how can you get from this big thing to like specific, like a roadmap or something? Uh, and I couldn't figure it out because I needed more data. So that's what I'm trying to do today. I'm trying to tell you about. So I'm going to tell you how I did it, what I found, and where I want to take it. So, well, it would be useful to have people, yeah, have a large data set of people describing what's going wrong. And fortunately, it turns out people like talking about their problems. And sometimes they do it online in public. And so actually there are different forums such as Reddit where people are describing their problems. And so I decided to anonymously process this information and see if the collective intelligence can give us something useful to say about this. So we took samples from each of these subreddits. We made sure the numbers align a little bit so we don't have like overrepresentation of certain neurotypes. And yeah, so basically how we processed it was first we have all these posts. First, we have to decide, is there a challenge being described in this post? Then summarize, then annotate that post with like, well, how is the user describing the challenge at hand, the person experiencing the problem, and the environment? Uh, so if we have those elements, we can start to think about a mismatch between things. Okay, and once you have that, you can start looking at, okay, what are the themes that keep recurring within these challenges, persons, or environments? And then you have something you could look at and maybe find something new. So uh, how to do that? It's pretty, there's a lot of data out there. So today we're starting with 2000 posts, but we're looking for an approach that's gonna scale up. Um, Basically, I implemented it using large language models that work in parallel. So for example, when they annotate whether a post contains a challenge, I wrote specific instructions and then I had them vote on whether a post describes a challenge. And if it does, we have them extract different elements to describe these things. So let's see if that gives anything useful. Um, so the first thing, of course, that would interest me is to see, okay, which challenges did we find? Does it make sense? And how much do they show up? But another thing that's interesting is maybe which themes are specific to one neurotype and which are specific, generalized to all of them, because that might tell us something about, well, if you want interventions for specific people or for everybody, then what should you go for? And yeah, let's go. So let's first look at these challenges, like what are people describing out there? So we found 7 main dimensions, and within those dimensions, there's 46 different kinds of challenges. So I'll show them in a sec. And then within those, there's a lot of real world scenarios that could be improved or, yeah. So let's look at these main 7 dimensions. I hope you can see the side of my screen. There you go. Yeah, so the most frequent one we saw was executive function and self-regulation. Well, the list is out here, so if you want to know the details, you can read it. What's interesting about it maybe is that the top 2 themes that happen a lot in this data set were I'm having difficulty getting stuff done, and I'm having difficulty processing, applying information in different ways. We'll get into it a bit in a second, but the other thing, the PR, is also kind of interesting because that's the one that measures, hey, does this happen in one neurotype, in one subreddit, or do we see this finding in a lot of different types of people experience this? And so the ones that have the most generalizability are different emotional challenges and different challenges with, yeah, systemic or structural fits. So we'll get to it probably. So let's look at one of these to see what it looks like. So getting stuff done. Well, I could keep going on this for a while, but I think we'll just show you some examples. Here's a very different example, which as you see, these have very low prevalence scores, PR scores, and that's because they're very specific to one subreddit. So it makes sense that the dyslexia-related challenges occur within dyslexia. So that shows us kind of that the data makes sense. So let's see if we can get like something a bit more concrete for now already, which is, yeah, so one of these emotional challenges that apparently are fairly common between different types of people have to do with, well, the top one is about performative anxiety, being evaluated and getting anxious for that. And then especially, yeah, some kind of freeze response, especially during interviews and presentations, which is, of course, not super surprising finding maybe, but it does give us, like, this is having this kind of map at like a larger scale gives us like a lot of different steps that we could pursue. So that's a lot of data, but let's look at more. I thought we were further. So how do they describe people? Well, they roughly describe 6 different dimensions. When they describe people, I mean, how does the poster describe themselves? And the characteristics they mention are also, well, like these ones. I guess most interesting here might be, again, these emotional aspects, these challenges that include burnouts that generalize to like a lot of different people. I guess we kind of know this, but it was interesting to see it in the data. And also the behavioral and motivational characteristics, like trying to get control of getting stuff done, that generalize a lot in this one. So I want to show you the last one before we get to the next part, which is, okay, we saw there's a lot of different challenges. There's a lot of different people. What about the environments? And so here, what's the key finding here is basically all of these dimensions of their environments are non-specific to the neurotype. Like all of these different people describe the same problems in the same kind of way. So they describe management problems. They describe task and workflow structure problems. The only exception actually is the sensory environment. There's some people who are highly sensitive to noises, to other sensations, and those are actually quite specific to certain neurotypes, but the other ones are much broader. And that's actually kind of a really useful finding because it tells us that if we do an intervention at that level, it can reach a lot of people. You're not just, you don't have a huge road. Yeah, you don't have a huge list of things you need to do for this kind of person. You need to do this, this, and this. But there's also some broader reaching fruits, which I think is very exciting. So that's a lot of data. Now we get to see, can we get something meaningful from it? So I want to show some correlations between themes. So which things happen together. And I don't want to spend too much time on this on a spreadsheet, basically. But the core insight was if you look at correlations between what kinds of people have what kinds of challenges, there's a lot more synergy there. There's a lot more, oh yeah, this kind of people have these kinds of problems. Whereas there is less data in here to support, okay, this kind of challenges occurs in this kind of environment. So as a result, a lot of these correlations from the research will show us like intervention methods that are for the individual at an individual level. So if you have this kind of profile, it might benefit you to have this kind of support rather than at what should an organization change at this point. So that would suggest that the organization can help the individual to do that work rather than change policy. The exception are the sensory complaints, like I mentioned before. If you have sensory difficulties and you're in an open office, that could just be challenging. And so that's a very obvious case where changes could be made. We also did, well, I also did a factor analysis to try and see, we have this massive data set. Maybe there's some unifying dimensions that would explain everything and make life easy. That would be amazing. And I just checked the time and I'm going faster than planned. Great. So one of the things, actually the main surprising thing that I found is that, as in the main non-obvious thing I found was that people with anxious patterns who get placed in environments with where they get evaluated according to strict, certain rigid guidelines, they experience that as quite stressful. And I mean, that just shows us how organizations could take more care about how to evaluate performance. So actually, the survey paper I cited earlier also describes this, where they said, well, if you evaluate someone by certain standard metrics that are not really how they are contributing to the organization, then that's stressful because you know you're contributing, but you're not being valued. So that's a problem. Yeah, so like I said, there was actually, I found surprisingly few patterns across all three dimensions. So it was mostly between challenges and people. And I think a large reason for this is that these environmental factors have such high consistency across different people. Like, different people describe the same problems in the same way. So that actually suggests a joint approach where we should help people with specialized interventions. So let's say certain, I think I have an example later, but basically if you have difficulties with numbers, then maybe either you get a tool that assists you with the numbers, or you take on tasks that involve less numbers. So that was not the best way to phrase it, but I hope it gets the point across. And at the same time, there's also like this huge opportunity for like environmental organizational changes because they affect multiple neurotypes at the same time. So I would love to elaborate, but I feel like I'm reading out a spreadsheet right now. And so I figured that the presentation is actually not the best format for this. So actually part of my future work will be to try and scale up this data set and then build a tool that can explore it so that people can actually examine it themselves to see like, okay, what kind of problems are out there? What kind of people are experiencing these problems? And then hopefully we can use that to inform practitioner guidelines or policy changes. So, yeah, and especially because we have, there's a frequency analysis of which ones are happening a lot. That doesn't tell us which problems are the worst. Like some people have very high, very difficult, very specific problems, but it does tell us like, okay, this is one way we can help a lot of people. Yeah. And also in my research, I'm planning to build support for individuals directly, such as LLM-based tools to support task execution or develop skills that might be useful. So I hope that was kind of interesting. That's kind of what I had prepared for today. And I would love to talk more sometime. So feel free to reach out.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you so much for your presentation. And I noticed that you said several times exciting, like this is exciting to see all the data coming together. And I get that. That is exciting. It's like you're discovering new worlds in a way. If I would ask you, what are you the most excited about in your findings, what would that be?
What's really exciting to me is where I want to go eventually is help people understand themselves and then help them understand like how, yeah, this mismatch. For me, it's really exciting if people can figure out why problems are happening and if they can play into that and they can, yeah.
Do you think in the world of neurodiversity, a lot of people are having difficulty in understanding themselves?
Well, this is my hypothesis based on a very small sample size.
But you think it is, right?
Yeah, I think, but also I'm not even just interested in labels at this point. I mean, just some people process information very broad, some people process it very linearly. I think these are all very interesting and useful things. And if you know how you work, you can play into that and you can live a fulfilling life. You can value yourself for the things you are good at.
Mm-hmm. And so you now used the data from Reddit. Are you also looking at other platforms to use data from? Because there's so much available, but I can also imagine that you might know some of the platforms that you would love to use, but are not able to share the data with you. How do you see that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of limitations in this kind of analysis. I think one way forward that I would love to explore is based on this, make an initial model of how these challenges work and then go test it in the wild, go talk to real people and get the full picture and not just what people posted online.
And then the end result is to create something that people can use to understand themselves better based on the data you have researched, that it all makes sense, that it's easier to understand yourself.
That's the grand design, to make a tool where people can learn about themselves and can figure out, okay, how am I gonna deal with these strengths and pitfalls that come with any characteristic.
Final question. What is for the grand design? I'm curious. I'm always curious. You know, I always want to know, Thomas, but how long? When are you planning to have the grand design? Is that a year from now, 3 years, 5 years? What are you thinking about?
It depends on, well, I'm trying to get funding to work on this kind of things, and that would speed up the process considerably. And so I'm hoping to have like a prototype for my idea within a year, but we'll see.
I wish you a lot of luck, and I think it's really cool that you dive into Reddit and see what everybody is saying there and just use that data to explore. I think it's a very smart move and well done and very interesting. Thank you for your presentation today.
Thank you so much for this event and for your time and attention.
Jarek, back to you.